And we're hiding all kinds of insecurities and worries and feelings of inadequacy and, hundreds of things.
After decades of silence, Hayley Mills, once Disney's Golden Girl, has finally revealed what Hollywood tried so hard to bury. In a private interview with BBC Radio 4, she admitted that Maureen O'Hara, the legendary red-haired icon of the Golden Age, did not live the glamorous life people imagined. And Mills shared that O'Hara was once accused of having an affair right inside a Los Angeles movie theater, a carefully staged hoax that turned thousands of fans against her overnight. She was mistreated on set by a powerful director for rejecting his advances, and later even came under CIA scrutiny following the mysterious death of her pilot husband. These secrets, Mills said, were supposed to be buried with her forever. So what made the 79-year-old actress finally break her silence? And what secret truly drove Maureen O'Hara to walk away from the spotlight and live in seclusion for 2 decades in the Caribbean? In her recent interview with BBC Radio 4, Hayley Mills mentioned the event she called the wound that never healed in Maureen O'Hara's life, the 1957 lawsuit against Confidential magazine. When speaking about it, Mills paused for a long time and sighed softly. "I don't think anyone can ever understand how much Maureen suffered. She once told me, those people can write whatever they want as long as it sells, and I'm the one who loses everything, even my honor." In October 1957, Confidential, then America's most popular tabloid, with over 800,000 copies per issue, published a shocking story titled "Red-Headed Star, Caught in the Dark." The article claimed that Maureen O'Hara was caught in an intimate position with a man at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, famous for its celebrity handprints in cement. The report gave such vivid details that it almost seemed real. Row Deceit 12, a light blue dress, and a Mexican businessman whose name remains unknown. What stunned the public was Confidential's claim of having an eyewitness and photographic proof. Hollywood erupted. NBC Radio repeated the story, and the Los Angeles Examiner ran a bold headline, "O'Hara's secret date exposed within 24 hours." But the truth was entirely different. O'Hara was actually in Madrid, Spain, filming Fire Over Africa, directed by John Farrow. At a press conference on November 4, 1957, held at the Beverly Hills Hotel, she presented her passport stamped with Spanish immigration records, a letter from Columbia Pictures confirming her presence on set, and behind-the-scenes photos taken by Life magazine photographer David McLean on September 27th, the very date the tabloid claimed she was in the theater. O'Hara announced she would sue Confidential for defamation and deliberate fabrication. Her attorney, Jerry Giesler, was one of Hollywood's most prominent defense lawyers. The lawsuit filed in the Los Angeles County Court demanded $1 million in damages, a massive amount at the time. However, this was more than just a personal lawsuit. According to Hayley Mills, there were hands behind the curtain trying to bring O'Hara down. Rumors circulated that Robert Harrison, Confidential's editor, had been encouraged to release the story as a distraction from the highly publicized divorce between Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra, which was causing a media storm in Hollywood. The O'Hara article came out the exact week Gardner filed for divorce, a coincidence too striking for many reporters to ignore. Some also believed a former publicity agent at 20th Century Fox, the studio, where O'Hara had once been under Schumteract, leaked her name to Confidential in exchange for suppressing another studio scandal. In court documents, O'Hara mentioned a man who was once a colleague but became a traitor without naming him. The trial lasted from November 1957 until mid-1958, becoming front-page news across the country. Associated Press reporter James Bacon wrote that O'Hara appeared calm every day, though clearly exhausted. Photos from the courtroom showed her clutching thick files, walking beside her lawyer, as reporters crowded around. Meanwhile, Confidential's defense insisted they were merely reporting based on credible sources. But under questioning their main witness, a supposed theater employee admitted he had only heard it from someone else. The courtroom burst into laughter, and the judge halted proceedings due to conflicting testimony. In the end, the court did not grant O'Hara a full victory, citing the lack of provable financial damage, yet public opinion overwhelmingly sided with her. The New York Times wrote, Maureen O'Hara proved that truth still has value, even in Hollywood. The consequences for Confidential were severe circulation, dropped nearly 60% within a year. Robert Harrison was forced to sell the publication, and its California office was investigated for journalistic misconduct. The case became known as the lawsuit that shook America's most powerful tabloid empire. Still, the wounds O'Hara carried did not fade easily. After that, she almost completely withdrew from public life, refused interviews, and once told, "The Irish Times, I learned that sometimes your enemies are those who hate you. They're the ones who write about you." Hayley Mills recalled seeing Maureen tear up stacks of magazines and say, "I won't let them rewrite my life." Mills believed that this trauma completely changed O'Hara's view of Hollywood from a dreamland into a ruthless battlefield where strong women paid the price simply for refusing to bow. From that moment, the relationship between O'Hara and director John Ford, who once considered her his muse, began to fracture. After the lawsuit, Hollywood was no longer a place of trust, but one of suspicion, ambition, and fragile relationships that could shatter with a single headline. He was a genius, no one denies that. But for Maureen, that genius was also a storm. According to Mills, the relationship between Maureen O'Hara and John Ford began in 1940, when they first met on the set of How Green Was My Valley in California. O'Hara was just 20, while Ford was already an acclaimed director at 20th Century Fox. People in the industry said Ford rarely took interest in actresses, but O'Hara was different. He was captivated by her strength, the fiery Irish hair, the cool voice, and the unwavering confidence. Mills said Ford practically treated Maureen as his own within the film world. He wanted her to act only in his films, to follow only his direction, she explained. Maureen once told me, "At first I thought it was respect. Later, I realized it was control." Between 1941 and 1957, Ford and O'Hara collaborated on 6 films, most famously Rio Grande, 1950, and The Quiet Man, 1952. During the filming of The Quiet Man in Kong, Ireland, their relationship began to strain. Crew members recalled Ford's frequent outbursts toward O'Hara, for not delivering the look he imagined in his head. In one scene, he made her repeat a sequence of being dragged through a muddy field under real rain all morning. When the crew asked to stop because she was shivering, Ford coldly said, "She wants it real. This is real." O'Hara later caught a mild case of pneumonia and rested for 2 days at Ashford Castle Hotel before returning to set. Mills said she simply remarked, "I won't let him see me tired." The press didn't ignore the tension either. Variety published an article in 1952 titled "Fire on the Set of The Quiet Man," describing the strained atmosphere between the director and his leading lady. Some journalists even speculated that Ford had personal feelings for O'Hara, which made her deeply uncomfortable. In AP reporter James Bacon's notebook, one crew member was quoted saying Ford was too attached to Maureen, but he would never admit it. On BBC Friday 4, Hayley Mills recalled Maureen never confirmed that. She only said, "He loved the image he created of me, not the real me." After The Quiet Man became a box office sensation in 1952, O'Hara was hailed as Hollywood's Irish icon, while Ford earned another Oscar. Yet instead of reconciliation, the gap between them widened. At press conferences, Ford spoke of O'Hara's perfect performance as if it were his own achievement, while she stayed silent and smiled politely. Mills recounted that O'Hara once said during a lunch in 1960, "I love his work, but I can't stand how he treats women. He can shout in your face, but be gentle with men." Rumors of their clashes spread quickly. In 1950, the Los Angeles Examiner revealed that Ford had called O'Hara a greedy woman during The Long Gray Line script meeting because she demanded a salary closer to her male co-stars. Studio records from Columbia Pictures show that she earned $85,000, about 30% less than Tyrone Power, despite appearing in more scenes. Offset, Ford was unpredictable. He sent O'Hara many handwritten letters, filled with contradictions, sometimes praising her. "You are the heart of my film." Other times criticizing you're too stubborn for anyone to love you. These letters were later confirmed by O'Hara's daughter, Bronwyn Fitzsimons, to have been kept locked in her mother's safe for years. Mills shared, "Maureen told me she never hated Ford. She understood he was lonely, drank too much, and feared being forgotten. But she could never forgive how he made her feel small." By 1957, when the confidential lawsuit erupted, their relationship had completely fallen apart. Ford reportedly refused to defend O'Hara publicly, despite once declaring he would stand by her no matter what. BBC's Los Angeles bureau noted that O'Hara broke down in tears when asked about this. She only said, "I don't need anyone to protect me. I just wish they wouldn't stay silent when others are suffering." The two worked together one last time on The Wings of Eagles 1957, but their communication was strictly professional. Witnesses said Ford didn't even greet O'Hara on the final day of shooting. When the film wrapped, she left the set first without saying goodbye. Even so, Ford often spoke of her in later years. In a 1964 Life magazine interview, he said, "No one understands me like she does. She drives me crazy, but I miss her." Hayley Mills reflected on BBC Radio 4, "I think Ford truly respected her. He never said he loved her, but everyone could see it. Maureen just wanted to be recognized for her talent, not for someone's feelings toward her. Their conflict wasn't just personal. It symbolized classic Hollywood itself, a world ruled by men where women had to fight to be taken seriously. For O'Hara, her outspokenness made her seem difficult, yet it was exactly what made her an icon of strength, a woman who refused to surrender. When Ford died in 1973, Maureen O'Hara did not attend the funeral. She only sent a bouquet with a small note for the man who taught me how to fight back. From then on, O'Hara began speaking more openly about Hollywood's unfairness and how women were forced into silence to maintain appearances. That, Hayley Mills said, was what she admired most. Maureen didn't carry bitterness. She turned her pain into a voice for others. It was from this moment that Maureen O'Hara stepped into a new chapter, one where she dared to speak out about the things Hollywood once tried to keep hidden. The 1940s were a glittering era for Hollywood, but behind the bright lights were closed rooms where power and fear coexisted. An actress could become a star overnight or vanish forever for saying no to the wrong person. Newspapers like Variety or the Los Angeles Examiner occasionally leaked vague scandals. Judy Garland was reportedly forced to work to exhaustion. At just 17, Marilyn Monroe once mentioned being made to attend dinners with producers she barely knew, and Rita Hayworth was pressured to change her name and image to suit male audiences. But all of it was swallowed by silence. Only Maureen O'Hara dared to speak openly. According to Hayley Mills on BBC Radio 4, the incident began in October 1945, when O'Hara attended a discussion event hosted by The Mirror at the Beverly Hills Hotel. When a reporter asked, "Do you think Hollywood favors actresses who know how to please others?" O'Hara replied calmly but firmly, "If favor means turning a blind eye to what's wrong, then I'd rather be forgotten than remembered that way." That statement, Mills said, made the entire room fall silent. 2 days later, The Mirror printed her words in full under the headline, "Maureen O'Hara, the actress who says no to power." The article sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Soon after, she was blacklisted by several producers. According to The Hollywood Reporter, within 6 months, O'Hara lost 3 leading roles, including Forever Amber, 1946, directed by Otto Preminger. An anonymous source at 20th Century Fox revealed that studio executives believed O'Hara was not easy to control. But instead of staying silent, O'Hara fought back. She sent a handwritten letter to Photoplay magazine, one of the leading entertainment publications of the time, writing, "I refuse to play a game where only one side gets to make the rules. We, the women in this industry, don't need pity. We need respect." The letter was published in full in the March 1946 issue, and the magazine sold out in just 2 days. Hundreds of female readers wrote to thank O'Hara, saying it was the first time someone had dared to speak for them. As Hayley Mills recounted, O'Hara didn't just protest in words. She turned down an exclusive contract with 20th Century Fox, even though it promised a 40% salary increase, simply because it included a clause requiring her to adhere to the image defined by the studio. Later, she told Mills money can buy you roles, but it can't buy you peace when you look in the mirror each morning. Between 1946 and 1948, while stars like Lana Turner and Veronica Lake were promoted as symbols of allure in glamorous ad campaigns, Maureen O'Hara appeared on the cover of Life magazine in modest attire beneath the headline, "A Different Kind of Beauty in Hollywood." The magazine described her as an actress whose self-respect outweighs her fame, a compliment, but also a double-edged sword in an industry where obedience meant survival. Mills said Maureen once told me she didn't hate men. She only despised those who thought power gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. She taught me that saying no isn't rebellion, it's self-defense. When asked whether Mills herself had ever faced something similar, she smiled wistfully. I was luckier, perhaps because in my time, women had begun to have the right to say no. But that was thanks to women like Maureen. Mills added that O'Hara often helped younger actresses out of uncomfortable situations. Once, at a Paramount Studios party in 1951, when she saw a young newcomer being led away from the group, O'Hara walked up, took her by the arm, and said, "I need her to rehearse the script with me." With that one sentence, she rescued the girl from a frightening moment. The story was later mentioned by columnist Hedda Hopper, who praised O'Hara as an Irish woman who fears no one. But her honesty came at a cost. By the mid-1950s, some directors labeled her difficult or stubborn, and she was rarely cast in romantic roles again. Yet curiously, the public loved her even more. When Miracle on 34th Street premiered in 1947, audience praised her portrayal of Doris Walker, a strong, determined mother, as the true image of herself in real life. On BBC Radio 4, Hayley Mills spoke softly. Maureen told me, "Justice is never cheap. You must pay something for it. But if you stay silent, you'll pay with yourself." Looking back, that statement defined Maureen O'Hara's entire life. She dared to challenge the system when others bowed their heads, dared to defend her dignity when others chose safety. Many critics later called her the woman who paved the way for Had Me Too, though. O'Hara herself never used such labels. According to Mills, O'Hara's courage came with deep personal pain. She paid with loneliness, Mills said. But it was the kind of loneliness that comes from standing tall in a storm, not from being left behind. That same spirit carried Maureen O'Hara into another chapter of her life, one where she faced not just professional prejudice, but also loss in love and family. In the BBC Radio 4 program, when asked about O'Hara's private life, Hayley Mills simply smiled and said slowly, "She loved 3 times. Once too early, once the wrong man, and once the right man, but at the wrong time." The studio fell silent. Behind the brilliance of the Queen of Technicolor lay a series of loves written in tears, loneliness, and pride. Maureen O'Hara married for the first time in 1939 at just 19 to British producer George H. Brown. Their marriage was brief, only a few months after meeting during a test shoot for Mayflower Pictures in London. The Daily Mirror called their wedding a black and white movie romance, since both were working on a film with Alfred Hitchcock at the time. But behind that romantic image was youthful haste. When O'Hara was invited to Hollywood to star in How Green Was My Valley Brown, insisted she stay in England. O'Hara refused. They separated soon after. 2 years later, in 1941, a London court annulled the marriage. She rarely spoke of it, writing only in her memoir, "I have no regrets, but it was my first lesson in the price of freedom." Hayley Mills recalled that O'Hara once told her over dinner, "In Beverly Hills, I never thought a woman should choose love over her career. Because when love fades, work is the only thing that keeps you sane." The second story of her life began soon after, and it was the longest and most complicated. In 1941, O'Hara met William Houston Price, an American director and writer. They fell in love while working together at RKO Pictures. At the time, O'Hara was a rising star in Hollywood, and Price was a talented but temperamental filmmaker. They married later that year just after completing 10 Gentlemen from West Point. At first, everything seemed perfect. But a few years later, Hollywood was buzzing with rumors about Maureen O'Hara's turbulent marriage. The Los Angeles Examiner ran a story in 1948 noting that Price often attended parties alone, while O'Hara was too busy to return home for weeks. Those rumors soon proved true when friends noticed Price's struggles with drinking and debt. Hayley Mills said in the interview, "Maureen told me she never wanted anyone's pity. She once said, 'I don't need a man to hold me up. I just want the person beside me to keep their word.' But in the end, he couldn't." Their marriage lasted 12 years, during which Price would sometimes disappear for months. Still, O'Hara tried to hold on. In 1944, they had a daughter, Bronwyn Fitzsimons, who later became a television actress in Ireland. To Maureen, Bronwyn was her lifeline amid the chaos. She once wrote in her journal, "I may fail in love, but I cannot fail as a mother." In 1953, O'Hara officially divorced Price. According to Variety, she paid off about $40,000 of his debts, a huge sum at the time, to prevent him from being sued. Yet she never publicly criticized him. When asked by The Hollywood Reporter about the reason for their split, she simply said, "I no longer recognize the man I once loved." Hayley Mills noted that this was the period when O'Hara lost faith in love, but became stronger than ever. She rebuilt her career and worked nonstop. She told me once, "When you're hurting, work is the only thing that can save you from breaking apart." Then fate brought Maureen to Charles F. Blair Jr., the man who changed her life forever. They met in 1959 on a Pan American Airways flight from New York to San Juan. Blair was a celebrated pilot, awarded the Medal of Honor by President Harry Truman for his record-breaking solo flight across the Atlantic. They stayed in touch for nearly a decade before marrying in 1968 at St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. As Mills recounted, Maureen said that was the first time she didn't have to hide who she was. She told me, "He didn't need me to be a movie star. He just wanted me to be Maureen." The couple lived peacefully in the Caribbean, managing a small airline, Antilles Airboats, and the Virgin Islander magazine. They also appeared on local television shows and were active in charity work for children on the islands. But their happiness lasted only 10 years. On September 2nd, 1978, during a short flight from St. Croix to St. Thomas Blair's seaplane, a Grumman goose suffered mechanical failure and crashed into the sea. The New York Times reported his death on the front page the next morning. According to Hayley Mills, it was a day Maureen never wanted to speak of again. She didn't scream or blame anyone. She just went quiet. I asked if she was okay, and she said, "I once lost my faith in me, but this time I lost the only one who helped me believe again." After the accident, O'Hara withdrew from Hollywood, sold her Los Angeles home, and settled permanently in St. Croix. She ran her husband's airline until selling it in 1980, then devoted herself to writing her memoirs and raising her granddaughter. Journalist James Bacon of Associated Press visited her in 1983 and wrote, "Maureen O'Hara may no longer be a movie star, but she still shines in her own way." Hayley Mills said on BBC Radio 4, "Maureen once told me she never regretted loving. She'd rather hurt from something real than live in something fake. She could forgive anything except dishonesty." As the interview ended, Mills said a line that everyone in the studio remembered. "Maureen told me, 'Happiness isn't something you find, it's what you manage to keep after everything else.'" And perhaps that's why, after all the romances and the tears, what remained was the legacy Maureen O'Hara left behind, a symbol of women who are strong, beautiful, and brave enough to live truthfully in a glamorous yet deceitful world. Throughout more than half a century in her craft, Maureen O'Hara was not just a film icon. She was living proof of the power of determination amid the turbulence of Hollywood. In an era when actresses were often confined to gentle archetypes, O'Hara chose to be different. She stepped onto the screen with flaming red hair, candid eyes, and a presence that made others cautious. The media called her Queen of Technicolor, not just because she looked dazzling in color film, but because in an age of pretenders, she was the only genuine one. According to Hayley Mills on BBC Radio 4, that title wasn't given by the studio, but by the cinematographers themselves. They said the camera seemed to have been made to capture her face. Mills shared that O'Hara understood cinema better than many directors of her time. She often chose her own costumes, makeup shades, and even suggested lighting changes to ensure each frame reflected the true spirit of the character. During the filming of The Quiet Man in 1951 in Ireland, O'Hara personally spent an afternoon with cinematographer Winton Hawke testing natural light to find the tone that would make her hair glow brightest against the gray skies. When the film premiered, critics were astonished. For the first time, red hair had become a symbol of womanly strength in classic cinema. The success of The Quiet Man was only one of her many shining milestones. Before that, How Green Was My Valley, 1941, had made O'Hara a star, while Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, turned her into a Christmas staple. Yet behind those timeless films were countless silent struggles. In her memoir, "'Tis Herself," O'Hara revealed that a producer once removed her name from an Oscar nomination list simply because she refused to play the obedient woman. Some directors also claimed she was too outspoken to direct. Even so, audiences always stood by her. According to a 19 Gallup poll, O'Hara was America's second most beloved actress, right after Ingrid Bergman. Hayley Mills recalled that Maureen never hid the pain she had endured. In a private conversation in 1995, she told Mills, "I was forgotten by the very world I helped build. But I don't need their pity. I need their respect." That statement, Mills said, perfectly captured the spirit of someone who feared not losing fame, but losing herself. In the 1960s, as Hollywood changed, Maureen O'Hara appeared less frequently on screen. Some newspapers claimed she was past her time, while others rumored she refused to work with young directors. The truth, as Mills revealed, was that O'Hara deliberately stepped back to avoid being boxed into the sweet mother roles Hollywood reserved for middle-aged women. She told me, "I've played strong all my life. I don't need to play weak, just to be loved again." O'Hara turned to business, opening a small fashion boutique in St. Croix, and later co-founding the Virgin Islander magazine with her husband, pilot Charles Blair Jr. Occasionally, she wrote essays about Irish culture and Caribbean travel topics few would expect a Hollywood star to care about. But it was that very shift that made her even more admired. In 1972, the Irish Times called her a rare woman, brave enough to leave Hollywood without regret. Ironically, despite starring in dozens of classics over nearly 5 decades, Maureen O'Hara was never nominated for an Oscar. It wasn't until 2014, at age 94, that the Academy finally honored her with a Lifetime Achievement Award for outstanding contribution to the art of cinema. The ceremony in Los Angeles, according to the Associated Press, was one of the most emotional moments of that Oscar season. O'Hara appeared on stage in a green gown, the color of her Irish homeland, and smiled, saying, "Thank you for finally remembering me." The entire audience stood and applauded for more than 2 minutes. Hayley Mills recalled how she felt watching the event. "I sat in front of the screen with tears streaming down my face." She didn't need that award to be remembered, but that moment felt like Hollywood's apology. In her later years, O'Hara lived quietly in Ireland, far from the noise. When reporters asked why she never returned to acting, she simply said, "I've said enough. Now, it's time for others to tell their stories." Yet the public never forgot her. After her passing in 2015, The Guardian wrote, "Maureen O'Hara wasn't just the queen of color cinema. She was the brightest color in Hollywood's black and white era." According to Hayley Mills, what made Maureen O'Hara legendary wasn't just her beauty or talent, but her authenticity in a world full of deception. She once told me that the most beautiful color on film isn't red or blue, it's courage. And she carried that color with her all her life, Mills said. Today, Maureen O'Hara's name is etched on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but her greatest legacy isn't that star, it's her indomitable spirit. She was the small Irish woman who made Hollywood bow down not for fame, but for dignity. The life of Maureen O'Hara, through Hayley Mills' recollections, is more than the story of a movie star. It's a tale of pride, resilience, and a light that still shines brightly on screen long after the cameras stopped rolling. More than half a century later, Hollywood still remembers her as the embodiment of courage, the little Irish woman who made the world bow. Yet, as Hayley Mills said, the story isn't over, as long as people still believe silence is the only way to survive. If you'd like to hear more untold stories from behind Hollywood's golden age, leave a comment, share your thoughts on Maureen O'Hara, and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter.